Well, we just welcome everybody. We just had a great executive committee meeting. There are much goings on in our area with closures, with fires, with scams, with transportation issues. And it is truly a scramble at many different levels for folks today. And we're so appreciative of Ed being with us to share his thoughts on moving forward. And I think that Angela can give a better overview of his work and accomplishments than I. So Angela, you're on.
Well, Dottie, did you have anything for a quick update for the office?
I do. Good afternoon. I'm Dottie Livers, and I just wanted to share a couple of quick things with you all. Of course, Office on Aging is here. If you all need any support, feel free to call us at 524-2786. We have upcoming a couple of events just to save the date for. March 5th is our annual Snowflake Ball event. This is a fundraiser for our Senior Companion Program, and that will be in the evening at Rothschild Conference Center. And then April 1st, we will be having our Pancake Fest event at Annual Pancake Fest at O'Connor Senior Center, and that's a fundraiser for O'Connor. So just wanted to have you all save the date on both of those. Again, if you need something, feel free to call our office. We'd be happy to help connect you. Angela?
Awesome, thank you. It's after the holiday season, and a lot of times caregivers, family members notice that a loved one may be struggling a little more than they initially thought. So here to talk with us today about that is Edward Harper. He's a licensed clinical social worker and has been the coordinator of the senior services at Blount Memorial Hospital since the year 2000. He's been a practicing clinician in counseling and community services since 1976, and he has developed a direct care program that is specific to supporting the welfare of caregivers. He is truly an asset to the community in East Tennessee area. Welcome to the program, Ed.
Thank you so much, Angela and Dottie, and the rest of the crew here. I appreciate the opportunity to come speak. I need to ask you a technical question that I didn't ask. This program runs from this moment until what moment? Around 3:30, is that right? Something?
Yeah,
okay.
We can get you out
Very
there.
good.
Yeah.
The reason I'm asking that, I don't want to run anybody off. I'm a 2-hour talker. So I am not going to test your tolerance with any of that. In fact, if I could lay out a format that I'd like to see today, I've just had some prepared remarks about this topic. I did not create a lecture or PowerPoint to be that didactic person today. What I would like to do is just make a few opening comments and prepared statements around my experience with caregiving after the holidays. And then you all have questions. I'm looking at who's signed in so far, and am I speaking mostly to professionals, or do I have any family caregivers out here? So if you're a family caregiver, raise your paw. So now, all professionals, yes. Okay.
Or some may be muted perhaps too.
Okay, so I'm going to go and speak from this point. Is that yes, I've been in this line of service for over 20 years now, and I'll give you just the lay of the land. Is that the hospital has made me available, and I feel like I'm an honored to be in this position. But I feel like it's fairly miraculous that it even exists. But the hospital has made me available to the community at no charge. The hospital, people ask me, well, who pays you? The hospital pays me to be available to any adult caring for another adult nationwide, no charge. And if you are clinicians out there and you're still charting, don't hate me. I don't have to have charts. So I don't have a chart, therefore I don't generate a charge. I don't generate a charge, therefore I don't have a chart. So don't hate me, but for 20 years I've not charted. So, yeah, I'm just really endearing myself to you. I know that. So out of 22-ish years, I think I have written articles for the paper or have been a guest speaker to talk about caregiver stress during a holiday. And you all probably even did one of those. It seems like it's one of those annual things that you do. But when Dottie asked me about this back in November, and I think it was November we talked, Dottie, is that I thought, yeah, I'd rather do it about what happens after the holidays, because that's when families are in a scramble. And I want to go over this. This is my experience. I might make a few marks over here. I'll try to do them large enough to be seen. If I do, it's just kind of to put a visual onto something I'm saying, not a graph that you need to copy down. But my experience over the past 22 years, just in this specific area, has been that I start getting calls about the middle of January. And I know, Dottie, you'd said that you had worked a hotline or a helpline, and you had the same thing, is that caregivers started calling in specifically about, what do we do? I just saw this. So when this starts, yeah, we can talk about caregiver stress during the holiday and how to get through that, and those tips and techniques. But actually, this process starts somewhere about the last of October. And we kind of go from July through October doing whatever we do as caregivers. It's balanced. We may have an incident, but we tend to have things sort of pat. And there's not a lot of people coming into the zone. Whoever's giving the care is probably giving the care without another set of eyes coming into it. But somewhere around last of October, the 1st of November, I will start getting some calls, and folks come in, and their questions are thinking about what to do in the upcoming holidays. Now, it's not how to keep the stress down, because the stress is already there. Some of the things that they're talking about is that, okay, we really don't know whether we can stay at home this year and have, like we've always done, have usually Thanksgiving at mom's house, or should we move it somewhere? Or we usually travel to Ohio or Florida or somewhere we travel. So people are having to make a preemptive decision about whether they even consider to travel. So when we look at this, do I stay home, or am I going to be a destination family member? And if it is, and if I got some concerns about folks at home, I'm certainly going to have some concerns about them traveling. So that stay or travel is a real issue that people start to wrestle with in the early days of November, because now we're looking at the holiday season running from the last of November with a national holiday, moving up to a religious and cultural holiday with time off. And then we got one more hurrah the week after with another national day off. So you basically have about a month where caregivers are having to balance people coming in, hi Disha, to the arena. They're putting eyes on to family members they haven't seen in a while. All the time they're trying to keep a custom and a routine with minor adaptations so that we don't really institute much change. We want to keep our family traditions and customs about the same. Ergo, folks are going, how do we do this when I don't think mom can really make her famous potato salad anymore, or she can't do the biscuits, or she seems to not know where things, or dad, I'm not really sure where he is. And or spouse is going, well, your father doesn't like a lot of noise now. So we're accommodating to things that are slightly beyond our control. And I say slightly because we can do a few things, but the few things that we do are not really going to evoke much change, cause much change, but they are attempts. And that stress comes from what do we do? How do we intervene? We also, have you ever noticed, I don't know if you have this same experience, but I would go home, I would drive 6 hours, and I would be an adult right up to my parents' doorknob. And if I touched that doorknob somewhere between Tennessee and North Carolina, yeah, you're smiling, I became the child again. Even though I'm 50-something years old, I understand that because I'm a parent, and my kids are in their 30s, and I said kids, didn't I? They're adults. But we look at that, we still have that transaction. The parent to child transaction doesn't mean that they infantilicize us, or and I hope I don't do that with my kids, but I have an acronym right now that it was given, actually one of my friends kind of called me out on some attitude I might have been holding, and it's called BOOM, and it's back off, old man. So I keep that. So, if you ever see BOOM written on my hand, it means I'm having to be very cognizant about how I deal with people that are younger than me, especially my children. BOOM, back off on that. So we're in this transaction about parent, child, spouse, who's in charge, who carves the bird, or whatever you have there. The rules inside the family, excuse me, the roles inside the family, rules too, but the roles. And then we look at what is happening, and this hits us because you may not want to see it, and you can't deny it. It's one of those things, once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And that is capacity. And I can get head nods out there, when your parent is no longer as capable as they were, either because technology has pushed them into a zone in which they don't feel comfortable or not capable, or that the things that they once could do, they're not really capable of doing. And these capacities are not always appreciated by every other person, because when we gather, I don't know about you, I was from a 2-person family, and I married into like a 6-person family. So we were very quiet. When I went to family gatherings there, I was the outlaw. I was the in-law outlaw. And as an in-law, I don't have the same perception of your mom and your dad as you do. So we've got this kind of chaotic mix that starts happening in there. But people are judging capacities. So in that, those capacities, they can either be intellectual, or they can be physical, or they might be risking, like driving, or that whole thing about if somebody is running a small farm or a tractor or some kind of moving part, or something that would be of risk. We can't unsee when somebody is no longer being as safe as they could be, should be. And then that starts this whole process of change. When we are gathering during this month, we now have questions to be asked. And we will start asking questions of each other, those subgroup questions. Did you see Mom? What do you think? We're really not talking to Mom about her capacities. We're talking about her to other subgroups in the family. And if you're the primary, mostly around caregiver, then other folks are going to come in and maybe ask you questions that you're not truly appreciating. Well, have you been helping Mom with her laundry? Have you been doing this? Maybe we should do this. What do you think about getting her a dog? I hear that young Williams has a Jack Russell out there. So, no, it's been taken. So, and you as the primary around town caregiver going, yeah, but you don't realize, yeah, maybe that'd be a little bit of therapy to her, but I'm going to have to buy the dog food. So you get these folks that come in with good intentions. However, the questions that they're asking is a little bit of a statement about how well you've been attending Mom and Dad. And every one of those questions is just fully embraced with appreciation. I don't know about you, but I just really appreciate people questioning what I've been doing and how I've been doing it. Yeah, I'm lying. So that starts the whole process of chaos. Now, let's just admit it. Family gatherings on the best ever day in your life usually involve some level of chaos. That might be benign chaos, might even be jovial, but it's still chaotic. It's out of you. And if you're a 2-person family coming into a 6-person family, I don't deal with chaos the way that 6-person family do. My ADD is much different from all of their ADD. In fact, I think they teach courses on it. So as these gatherings and arrivals happen and the chaos builds, the observations and discussions begin to happen with subgroups. Then the family dynamics happen. Now, I'll make a mark on the board here. Folks will show up and arrive even though they don't want to be there. They got to be there. And in all families, we are somewhere on this continuum. And in the best of all possible worlds, we're a mutual aid family. We might have our moments, but we always listen to people and let them have their say, and we come together to assist each other. Moving away from all the best of all possible worlds, we run on obligation. It might have been that the family members were not be able to hurt. It's my way or the highway, and you couldn't get emotional distance in the family, so you got geographic distance, but about 2 to 3 times a year you gather. But you gather under obligation. Now, on this vertical plane, these are chores. These are things that happen. And they happen regardless of whether you're the mutual aid family, your obligation family. That's when people fall or they lose some capacity or something, and somebody has to happen. Now, on this side of the family, if something happens and you come over and you say, "How may I help?" And it said, "Well, I don't really want to be a burden. However, if you did this, it would help." And usually they say, "Thank you." Now, anybody that thinks, even though you love your parents to death or you love your spouse to death, that giving care is not a burden, I don't know what planet you live on, because it is a burden to some extent. If you allow me to do this much, I don't know if you can see there, this much, I can accomplish this much. That's what I want to do. I want to be helpful. I'm willing to do this. I can do it. If I do this much, you let me do this much, I can accomplish this much. Over here, if I have to do this much and I only get this much done, that is a true burden. Now, over here, the burdens are not as intense, they're not as dynamic or dramatic. Over here, they're very intense, they're dramatic and dynamic. When you do something for somebody over here, it's usually, "Well, I really didn't want that, I wanted this, why took you so long?" And it's over here to say, "Well, let's go help mom or dad or whoever out. Who can go?" "Well, I can go. Over here is that, "I really don't want to deal with that, but I guess somebody's got to go. I'll go for a little while." All this begins happening in front of each other between November and January the 1st. Okay. Goodness happens, consternation happens. So as those family dynamics of obligation and mutual aid kind of play out, you got in-laws and outlaws watching and you've got people that now that you have seen that I am no longer safe to drive, what do you do about it? You can't unsee it. So in January, Dottie, this is what they call, you know, there's reflection going on and there's some communication. Now, I can't communicate with everybody, and they start out now because we can do emails and messages and texting and that kind of thing. There's a lot of that going on. But that is not the same as talking. People find it easier to set out things in written form than to pick up the phone and talk. But you can't do the conference calls all the time, so now you're subgroup. So there's a discussion of what could be done, who could do it. And that's when the good idea fairies seem to appear in the initial stage. And they say, oh, I think we should do this for Mom. Okay, well, you live in Ohio, I live in South Carolina, and I am 2 hours from Mom, or I'm 2 blocks from Mom. Who's going to do this? Well, I thought maybe you could get it started and we could hire somebody. Have you looked at the expenses? So we have this initial, after the religious holidays, after the Christmas, after whatever that you're celebrating there, after the custom, or after, even if you're not religious and it's just more of a family custom that we do this, we go back home after January, but we begin to go, something's got to be done. Now, how many people in here have heard this statement? My mom is 92 and she lives alone. She lives by herself. And I'll ask that, and how many times do you call her a day? And who does her shopping? And if you ever worried about her going down the block, we don't let her drive 2 blocks. Well, she can wreck out of the driveway. Does she really live independently? The answer is no. I worked in the independent side of assisted living or residential, and even though I had my mother-in-law there and I had my mother in assisted living, I saw this from another point of view. Is that most of the folks that are in assisted living in independent living are not living independently. They have family members coming over, making sure that things are right. There's still somebody, and that is maybe limited assistance, but it's still assistance. So this whole process begins to boil around January, with family members talking, and then, as in anything else, in any group, any system, you'll have a brilliant fireball, and then it'll kind of get down to a glow, and then it'll get down to a glimmer. When you have the folks that are kind of doing the frontline work anyway. So this gets you into February. The players and positions tend to show themselves in February. This is when I start getting phone calls. Today is Thursday. Yesterday, my first appointment was 9 o'clock in the morning, and I finished my last appointment at 6:30 at night. Is it February yet? No, but it happens just about this way every year, and it is not something I say, oh, you can just bank on it, bet on it, but you can almost do that, because people come in and they start, well, this is not working. What we found out over the holidays, that Mom's a little further longer. They actually were seeing people that weren't there. They were telling me about my aunt who died 2 years ago. So the players and positions start positioning themselves. So you'll have the primary caregivers. That's 2, 1, 2, or a very few. That's the way that happens. And if you ever been anybody to complain about, well, my brother never helps out, stop. If you've been given care, you don't want your brother there. You got it balanced enough. And you say, well, why don't you come and take care of her for a week? Well, Dottie, if you had those medications set up the way that you needed to have them set up, I'll guarantee you he will mess them up. You know, you'll find some way to mess it up. Because that caregiving is not a solo job, but it's one, two, or a very few. Now, there's some families that are able to incorporate their mutual aid in it. But if you're coming from moving this direction towards obligation, there's going to be very little organization. My stories about this kind of thing is that if Angela, you were to make a sandwich for me, that takes a lot of time to make that sandwich. Not going to the refrigerator and doing whatever you do to make a sandwich while I'm sitting back watching something. But you probably go shopping. In between doing every other thing that you got in your life, you go shopping for me. And you get that and whatever and bring it back. And probably you're paying for it on your credit card and go, I don't know whether I need to ask Dad or for money or not. I know it's just that whole guilt trip feeling that. And you can't bring it to me. And I look at it and I go, well, thank you very much. But, you know, I really don't eat that bread. Or I only eat Hormel ham. You know, is this Hormel? You know, it'll be something wrong with it. It's like frying an egg and you bring it into me and you go, you don't know whether I like fried eggs or flipped eggs or scrambled eggs. So you make three kinds and bring it to me and I go, well, I tell you what, you cooked the wrong eggs.
I'd be moving to obligation really fast.
Yes.
Flipping tables, maybe.
Yeah. I'm painting the starker end of that picture, but I've been a family therapist a long time. You know, I've been in it just about as long as I was in this line, and I saw it happen that caregivers put this kind of work into doing this. They do this much, and they're able to accomplish this much. That's a burden, and you're gonna have feelings about that. If somebody no longer appreciates because of neurodegeneration what you're doing, you're thrown off. Even if it's on the really good side, because that is not the person you knew. This is a February conversation I have. This is when people are going, something is really wrong. We try to do this and that. We had some ideas in January, and here comes February. So you begin to see, I remember the sociology classes talking about stratification of labor, who does what, who's good. Your brother still is okay as a caregiver, but he just can't be setting up your medicines, Dottie. You know, he's probably the good family pet. Not quite as effective as Jack Russell there, but Jack. But mom or dad seem to enjoy his company when he's around. Yeah, you're a little jealous because you're doing all the work. But his role is on the other end of stratification. He's the recreation and leisure person. You know, you are the nose to the grindstone person. People can come in and have a little, if you don't believe this, just try it out. They might have a little resentment about, you know, doing all this work and not getting a thank you. Yeah. Then we have the well-intentioned in-laws and friends that are helpful and then become hindering. Now, I sound like I'm going all negative on this, but this is, if it's none of this is happening, then I don't ever see these people. I don't know these people. I'm sure they're out there. Hooray. But you get the help that is hindering, because you're the primary caregiver. That's February. That's when people come in and start getting. By March, after 90 days, you got to do something. Even if it's wrong, you're going to do something. You remember Jerry Clowers, any of you? You're talking about going out and I think it was raccoon hunting or something, and he went up to climb to get a raccoon out of a tree and something. It was a bobcat. Bobcat lit on him. He said, "Shoot up here amongst us. One of us got to have some relief." You at this point, you got to do something. But what? Now, folks come to me, and I'm sure they come to you because you're working in social services, and they want an answer, i.e., a fix. Is there not a resource? Isn't there some mythical creature that can come in and take care of this? But what they don't have and what they need is authority. This is where I start asking questions. Well, okay, if we're going to do something, who has the authority to actually intervene? Who can do the intervention? Are there documents that say you have authority? Do you have authority over money and assets? Who has the authority to make repairs? And who has the authority to do environmental engineering? You ever tried to move somebody's ottoman? Yeah, no, that ottoman's been right there for 30 years. Well, Mom, it's a trip out. I don't want anybody moving my ottoman. Who might have the authority to do that? So we get into this phase that when someone comes to talk to me, I run this newspaper inverted pyramid down: who, what, when, where, and how. Who can do this? Now, you know, it's Bill, right? Yeah. So, Bill, if you're going to take care of me, I have to give you permission to have the authority to take care of me, because under the Constitution, you are you and I am me.
Right. The legalese of it all.
The legalese of it all. Truly, the Constitution says, I have rights and privileges.
Mm-hmm.
So if I say to you, Bill, I don't know if I'm going to be making really good decisions here if I get kicked in the head by a horse, or I fall off my bike, or something happened. Would you be the guy that's in my corner and make decisions for me when I cannot make them for myself? And you will say,
if I know you better, I might.
Yeah, exactly. But at some point, let's just say you do. Now you have the authority. You don't have power over me, but you have the authority to act on my behalf.
An interesting story you bring this up. Mm-hmm. A very close friend of ours is a widow. She has no family in the Knoxville area. She has a niece who lives way out of state and is very busy. And so my wife and I have pretty much done all of this with her legally. Mm-hmm. We have power of attorney and da-da-da-da-da. The trust company has her financial side of it. We have all of her healthcare side of it. But going through that process is interesting, and I would recommend to anybody who you find folks who have very limited family or close friends. We have a team of people. So it's not just on Jeannie and me, but there's 5 of us. And 4 of us are going out to dinner tonight with her. And she has, in great detail, talked about, if I get hit in the head by the horse, if I fall, this is what I want. This is what I want my funeral to be. I want all of this, what I want done with my estate, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, even though that's not part of our responsibility. But just so you all know that when all this happens, this is what I want done.
Right.
She's fortunate that she's got a lot of resources, and it makes it, easy. it's hard to talk about, but you got to talk about it.
Well, or you don't.
Or you don't.
And what I appreciate you telling this part of the story that I didn't have to wander into. Thank you for doing that, because this is the even though it's not direct family, is a group of folks that are about mutual aid and acceptance, and we know that you're the rare case. We know that your case is rare. Now, I have seen people who've done that, and I'm glad you brought that one out. Where I'm talking about, whether is it at least for just this discussion, there's some type of intactness to the family, even though it might be blended. You know, it's intactness. When you have elder orphans, you know, I don't know what percentage, Bill, but most of them don't have any support at all. You happen to be one of the few that can reach out. So when this opportunity to talk about with your clientele, with your families, with your kids about powers of attorney, I had the opportunity to be invited to speak on NPR. And I didn't just do this maliciously, but they asked me a question. I did not answer it. I launched into having my little 3 minutes of airtime on talking about powers of attorney are not old people documents. If you're 18, if you have a child that's 18, a grandchild, anybody you know, they need a power of attorney, especially medical. Especially medical. If financial would be helpful, because if they happen to run into some kind of windfall or something and that type of thing. And the state of Tennessee has an authorized healthcare agent form that can either be signed by 2 witnesses or by a notary public and be a valid standing medical power of attorney. It names a primary and an alternate. You can only have 2, you can't add 3. On your other powers of attorney, put as many as you want. But it basically is an or document. It means primary or alternate can make decisions for me. So with all this planning, this is where I'm going with this. With all this planning, unless there is some authority to move on the who, what, when, where, then you can't. You can't do that. I mean, you can go do things, but you have no authority. In the state of Tennessee, and many other states, I only know that this one, and in November, I rechecked this with the attorney that was presenting at the Conference on Aging, just to make sure things hadn't changed or I hadn't misheard things 5 years ago, is that in the state of Tennessee, if your spouse, you are not automatically a power of attorney. Constitutional rights, right, Bill? I am me and you're you, even though we might have done this. Now, where it's confusing, because marital folks share properties, and upon divorce, you can get 50% of it and blah, whatever works. But you share assets, but if I were to go be in the emergency room and my wife showed up and I did not have power of attorney, and Bill, you showed up and said, wait a minute, I'm his friend, I don't think he would want to do this. And the doctor would go, at this point, but his wife, yeah, but she's not power of attorney. And besides that, they're having a spat. I'm not sure that they're even together. I mean, you could take that on out too. But this is where, coming in off of December, you know, we got all these things that are happening. We're kind of talking about dynamics and dramatics and that kind of thing. And you got this information, you need to move. But if you don't have the authority to move, you can't evoke change. So that power of attorney is medical and financial, to go on my little talk here. The first thing is that people say, well, I've got one. How many people have heard that? Well, I really hope you do, but if it's in a lockbox in a bank, you ain't getting to it on Friday afternoon, Saturday, Sunday, and if it's a holiday Monday, forget it. If you don't have a key, you're not on the list, you don't get in there. So those documents, if they exist, they need to come out of that lockbox, get into a firebox, and the originals need to be kept by the primary caregiver. Because if you have incidents of folks losing things, those can be lost. Now they'll say, I've got them. We filled out a living will. That's not a power of attorney. Or we have a last will and testament. That's not a power of attorney. Power of attorney says Dottie has authority to take care of me. I have asked her. She has accepted that. Now, Dottie, you can revoke that at any time, and I can revoke it at any time. But that gives Dottie the authority to move on me. And the word durable means that back in the 1800s, that durable meant if I asked Bill to go sell horses in North Carolina, he did that. But if I got kicked in the head by a horse, he no longer had the authority to sell horses for me. That's the reason they put the word durable, which goes beyond reason, having a sound mind. So when both medical is durable and financial durable, that's just a done deal these days. So when people say they have it, I say prove it. You know, if I get pulled over, is it Peggy in the left-hand corner over there? Is that right? Yeah. Yeah. If Officer Peggy pulls me over on Alcoa Highway, she says license and registration, and I don't hand her either one, do I have license and registration? No. She might be able to go find it, but I don't have it. So if I ask people, say, hand it to me, can you hand it to me? And then, no, I don't know where it is. You don't have it. I can't take your word at the bank. Peggy can't take your word at the hospital. So those are just extremely necessary. Does it exist? Do they exist? Who has it? Are they old, or does someone get a new one? And what are the limits of authority? Most of them are broad sweeping now, but there's some of them that caveat, and that's a restriction. It's like if your friend Bill was wanting you to do this or not that, it's probably, it sounds like she's savvy enough to have that line itemed out. And then even if you get it, what is the limit to authority, and what is the reality of acting on it and taking charge? Now, I'm not going, that's a whole nother thing, Dottie. If you ever want me to come back and just wear everybody out on that, I'll certainly do it. But it is not always as easy as just having the document. Because if I go to Bill and say, well, I'm going to do this for you, you don't need that car, you don't need that anymore, you need to drive. You can say, I'm not selling that car. Well, if you have a semblance of cognitive capacity, which is not legal competency, I can't do anything. So those are kind of on time. It's all a matter of how all the stars line up that particular day is what you might be able to do. I've got a person in my office yesterday, has power of attorney, went to the bank, do something for mom. We can't talk to you. Oh, yes, you can, but you have to go kick on the manager's door. You can't take a teller's word. You can't take a financial officer's word for it. You got to get some. Yes, I do have power of attorney. She is having dementia, and I will be, taking charge and making sure that hackers don't get in her account. So this family care is going to be provided by family, or care is going to be provided mostly by family. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but if you have $30 an hour to pay for a caregiver to come in home, Deisha, you know that you run it a little differently, but for the service providers out there, the private profit-making service providers, care has gone between $25 and $30 an hour. And I talked with a care provider yesterday, and they're at $30 and $36 an hour. Now, that's just effectively taking a lot of people out of the loop. I'm not fussing about it. I'm just saying that we're going to have more and more people say, well, we can't buy that care. So who cares? Who's going to be given care? Well, statistically, it has not changed since 1995 that somewhere around 95% of the caregivers are women. They're between the ages of 45 and 65, and at 65 we don't count anymore because they're supposed to be retired. But that's when people make decisions as to not take promotions, to stay in the same office, to leave the job, work part-time. So all those caregiver things start coming up to realities in about March. And I'm just going to go through what, if I had folks that didn't quite know this, but there's in-home non-medical, which is running right now about $30 an hour. It went up from 25. Residential, independent living, assisted living, and memory. Depending on where you are, that's going to run anywhere from $3,800 for independent kind of living up to $6,000. Yeah. And then we get to the reality of, does this person need an institutional care like a skilled nursing service? Well, that's going to start at $7,500 a month and go up. And if you are paying out of pocket, most people don't have that $1 million, $500,000 to be paying towards that. It's going to be on Medicaid. Most of the people I know in my neighborhood or whatever, they can pay for it a little while, but they can't pay for it for 3-4 years. We're going to be looking at Medicaid. And then the rude awakening between urban legend and what actually happens in skilled care and how much care can be given. All that reality seems to be hitting by March, and then we have spring break. So, right, and who wants to miss a chance to go to Myrtle Beach with the grandparents, you know, that kind of thing. So anyway, that's my rundown, and boy, I told you I was a 2-hour talker, and I'm pushing it. But you asked me to speak for 45 minutes. I think I'm right at 48. So that's my rundown from November, is what it kind of looked like in my life, what kind of things come up. If I sound kind of doom and gloom, I don't mean to do that. It's just that I don't see all the people who are having a glide. It's happening. I'm getting the folks who are going, how do we pay for this? Who does this? So why don't we just open it up to whatever questions or comments or whatever you want to make, because I'm not the expert in the room. I'm just one of the people that have experience here. So anything that you want to do, so ta-da.
Thank you, Edward. If you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself, but I can kick it off real quick. On this call today, we have practitioners, frontline staff, caregivers, and a lot of times frontline staff get panicked phone calls from family members asking for services for their loved ones, but a lot of times they're not necessarily sought after with the loved one's consent. Do you have some ways that maybe we can encourage the family members to start the process with their loved one involved? I know every case isn't, like, sometimes you can't really, maybe the capacity might not be there, but do you have some methods that maybe you've tried that have worked?
Well, this is going to be maybe sound a little flowery, and I want to somehow impart some respect to that caller, because they're calling on behalf of someone to try to improve a life circumstance. So I want to kind of give them thank you so very much for being so kind and caring, or whatever's going. But I think, Angela, what your folks are getting, and it doesn't have to come in February, it can come in May, kind of thing. What you're getting is that they've had a conversation with family members and they go, well, have you tried this? Well, somebody told me that if you went in these, well, if you call this number, these people will help you out. Well, we both know that helping out and solving or being effective are not all the same things. Just by being there with a phone call that you can answer is of help. However, folks are going to say, well, I know that they would qualify for some of this. Well, there's eligibility. That's the unknown. I think if I were to attempt to answer that, it's such an individual, is that if your folks could know that they don't have to solve that situation. It's just the fact that they are giving some respect to this person reaching out, and then to give them an acceptable dose of reality. Well, you know, these kinds of things are available if your family member applies for them. And it asks, here's the key thing that I do this all the time, and I wear people out with it. I'll ask, who's their power of attorney? And your frontline staff should be versed in what is a power of attorney, so they can kind of help that. And even if it's just a medical power of attorney, sometimes that really helps. They can get that authorized healthcare agent form to them. And then the second thing I wear people out with is I'll ask, Angela, who's your power of attorney? I want to get, Bill, I want to get the whole package. No, not just this person. I'm calling for this person. They're not doing too well. Okay. Well, Angela, in the event that you needed somebody, do you have somebody in your corner? So you're actually helping beyond their question, because you're getting them to the point that there's some level of authorization, because you're going to ask them, does this person want this? You basically, they have to apply for themselves. But if they are power of attorney, then they perhaps can apply for it. So is that close enough to kind of work? I wanted to keep it kind of simple, but you are going to have to go to that authorization to find out who actually has the authority to make this request. You never not give people information. You always give them information. However, if you want to be that agent of change, then you want to find out who has the authority to do the who, what, when, where kinds of things.
Awesome, thank you.
Satisfied enough. I'm sorry. We don't work we work in a tough place. We didn't know the job was as dangerous as it was when we took it.
So we had a comment made by Rachel Frazier. She's with the Knox County Health Department, and she said she recently got a real-world education on assisted living facilities. She didn't realize that some of them have base pricing, and then you add more money for the increased levels of care that your loved one needs. And she has a friend that's paying upwards of $7,000 a month, and that's just kind of, she's like, that's unreal to me. And yes, I agree. We do have to find better long-term care solutions, Rachel. That's a lot of money.
Hey, Rachel, is this a Rachel Frazier that I know? Could be. So, yes, anytime that I'm looking for a hotel, you want to go to the hotel and ask how much their costs are, not go to Expedia, not go to TripAdvisor, because then you're asking somebody else. Go to the source. And you have to realize, this is what I tell folks, and I've been through this. I've been through it 3 times with family members. They were fortunate enough at least to be able to use a residential facility for some period of time. Is that when you go to a hotel, you have a price, and that price includes basically accommodations and service. And then if your kids eat the candy bars out of the refrigerator, you have another $50 charge for 3 candy bars. They have that. They have the accommodations and the service. So that's what we expect. When we go to an assisted living or a residential or a retirement, we somehow lose that sight that this is a business deal. Because this is exactly what it is. It's a business deal. we're paying for accommodations and care. And how much care am I getting for this base price? But just as you're saying, Rachel got her, you know, oh, there you are, Rachel. You got your eyes open to this because, oh, I thought we were all benevolent. No. Some people want to make money more than other people. I told my kids, and I'm going to wear you out. I told you I was a 2-hour talker. Said, we go to Charleston. You go out on the docks and you can buy shrimp for, let's say, $5 a pound off the boat. Of course, it's got the heads and the wigglies on it. But, you know, you buy shrimp. You go to a little mom and pop for about 12, 15 bucks. You get about a half dozen shrimp and cornbread and beans and slaw. And you go to Shim's Creek and you pay 25 bucks to 30 bucks. You get 3 shrimp, a piece of lettuce, and a curly carrot. Some people are proud of their shrimp. You know, I just look at that. You have to know that some people, this is a money game. Hotels are a money game. We know that. But we don't know that about residential because every last one of us in here are in social services, and we're kind of coming from a benevolent bend. And when we are talking with marketers, they're there to sell beds. I worked for the Hilton Company in 1974. I worked as a front desk person, and I also asked on those PBX things. And our job was to fill beds. A marketer's position at an assisted living or a residential is to fill beds. If you work for the Bijou Theater, it's called to get, you know, people in seats. It's just that same thing. So it's not that we're somehow foolish. We might be a little bit naive to the process, but Rachel, it doesn't take us long to figure that out, does it? So, you know, we just don't have to have one instant. We go, oh, okay, I need to look at this a little further. So, you know, when people come to me, and this is where I get to be the bad guy, I try not to get into other people's business. It's not my business to be in other people's business. But if you're coming to me, Angela, and you're paying $7,000 a month, and I'm thinking, you know, we could probably get this same service for about $5,000 with everything included. And I know some over here, I'm not trying to get you not to go to facility A because you could go to facility Z. But I'm going to tell you about facility Z. Now it's your choice, right? Yeah. I got myself in hot water, not within 21 this year anyway. Someone was running out of money. And for what money that I knew they had left, I knew they could go to another facility that charged $3,000 less a month. Wow. So they could get, for $6,000, they could get 2 months instead of 1. And of course, that person made that change, and guess who got the phone call? Yeah, I actually made that decision with that family, right? No, I just told them, hey, you can go down here and buy this same thing. And how many of you all do coupons and that kind of thing? You know, if you want to go buy something somewhere, you don't have to pay retail price. You wait a little while and it drops down. It's a business game. But we as social workers don't look at it that way. We have that benevolent bend. Anyway, sorry, Rachel, to go off on such a tangent, but I got that learning curve too. You're not the only one that got that. You know, I got mine about 15 years ago. But you have any other questions or people that just want to add to this? Because I can say I'm not the expert in the room. I'm just one of them.
I've got a funny little story. It's really not funny, but the lady that
I don't know whether to laugh or not now. Yeah.
Well, now just wait. Just wait till you hear it.
I grew up in a family of mixed messages. Should I laugh? Should I not?
this buddy of ours that, you know, I was telling you about, her husband had a protracted illness. And we came to the decision, our team, that he would probably need nursing home services. So he was on a feeding tube. So we went to this one facility, which has a wonderful reputation. And they began talking about the food that they prepared and whatever. And we'd already talked about the price. And I said, well, you know, Michael's on a feeding tube. You know, we're not going to be taking advantage of your food offerings, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And she said, that doesn't make any difference. Your food's part of the package. And, you know, it didn't make any difference about the, you know, the cost. But, you know, he didn't end up needing to go. He thankfully was able to die at home. But yeah, it's rough. And yeah, but yeah, it didn't make any difference that he was not going to be consuming any food from them. The price didn't change.
We could go on with stories like that, and let's get together, Bill, and we'll exchange some, because we might even call names on them. So.
We can do that. Thank you for doing this. Angela, turn it over to you. I've got to run though.
And me too. I've actually got to be in Gatlinburg in about 2 hours. So
good luck.
I want to say thank you all so very much for letting me be here. I never know if I inform people or I just test their tolerance, and they're just entirely polite to me. So I thank you for letting me be here. I just wanted to give you the rundown of sort of what starts happening about November with me, and then by March, you know, where things kind of end up. This is the after the holiday conundrum. So.
Well, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks all.
Yes, thank you.
See you.
Bye.